listen. So glad you're with us wherever you are. If you're joining us on the airwaves here in Santa Barbara, California, where we're sitting, we welcome you. Good Life Now can be seen. It's prime time every day, every weekday, 4 to 5 p.m. on TVSB, and on Sundays at 4:30. So we love that so many of you are joining us. There's new episodes every day, so we've got so many great guests. And so we see many of you joining us now at the podcast, which is Good Life Conversations, as well as the YouTube channel and goodlifetelevision.org and social media. You can find us pretty much everywhere. So we're so glad you're finding us. And we're talking about the good stuff, and we're talking to real people. We're keeping it real, but we get to choose what we focus on, and so we're trying to focus on the good stuff, and that's what we're here to do today. And so I'm grateful. We're actually inside the studios of TVSB today. So it's a rare occasion, but it's fun to be here in downtown Santa Barbara. And I'm really excited about my guest. Mark Alvarado is with me. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Great to have you.
Yes.
I've been reading all about you. It's amazing when you, if you're like me, I love hearing kind of the real authentic great stories. Yes. And somebody like you, I mean, just reading about you last night and today, I realized, we're all walking around all day long and we see all these people but we don't really know what's the story here. And, it's somebody, a mentor of mine once said, he's like, Dean, it's like everyone you see is like a walking book, that if you took the time to sit down and crack it open, you'd learn, and you'd discover why somebody is the way they are, or what. And so it was just fascinating for me to read about you. Born and raised here, you're Santa Barbara High School Don, you're an athlete, you had this journey. Take us back, if you would. We were just, before we came on, we were talking about the Santa Barbara Dons, and I know sports were big for you, but take us back to those days.
Well, I'd like to go back in the beginning, the farm worker time, because my mom came out of the farm worker movement, and my dad was established here in California. As you know, we're many generations here. Yeah. So there was the amalgamation of kind of two cultures, right? Because on my dad's side, there was no Spanish spoken. Jazz was the music, right? And it was very much an eclectic, kind of an American experience back for him growing up in the 40s and 50s. And so we had that foundation. Then on my mom's side, we had the ranchera music and the parties and family and all these kind of things. And so it was a combination of that. So it was kind of like two storms coming together also. Huh. And I think that's a good way to describe my early upbringing, was being raised in a household like that. So there was a lot to draw from, but there was a lot of challenges as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was right here
in Santa Barbara. I was actually born in Santa Maria, but we were just there for just a spell. Okay. I think they picked a row of strawberries and then they came to Santa Barbara the next day. But that's just kind of a anecdotal thought. But anyhow, but I was been in Santa Barbara since the age of 2. Okay. And so my dad was a furniture merchant here in Santa Barbara. He owned a few furniture stores on State Street. And so I actually grew up on State Street. Huh. We lived out in Goleta, and so we were always coming. And so I've always been a big part of the Santa Barbara community from ever since, from a long time. Yeah.
And you played with the great Randall Cunningham.
Yes. Randall was our quarterback in high school, so it was football and basketball, and he ran track. And we knew back in those days that Randall was going to go on to do great things, just like his brother Sam. And it's just been an honor to be associated with the Cunningham family, and just to come, having that pride with us, stick with us all the way up until today. Yeah.
Yeah. And what did sports do for you in terms of your upbringing?
Well, it gave you a sense of identity. It gave you a sense of responsibility. It gave you the opportunity to perform. It gave you the opportunity to be somebody. And I was really fortunate that I had older uncles on my mom's side that were recruited to be a baseball player and another one to be a basketball player. So they had college scholarships. And at that time in the 60s, that was a big deal for Chicano kids to get scholarships and to be looking at pro scouts in baseball and whatnot. And so growing up, I always saw the pictures and the trophies, when I was real small. And so always aspired to kind of follow in those footsteps. But then when you get there, the work comes in, right? And I was a big kid growing up, big lanky kid, awkward, couldn't tie my shoes and chew gum at the same time. And so it was very challenging for me, but I was determined and to do something with sports in my life, as that being a part of being successful as a young man and hustling. I think I really pride myself on those. Just kind of always going after it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great quality. Sometimes I wonder if that's missing in today's situation a little bit, but that kind of get it, you know, what do you do? I do whatever it takes.
Yeah, you gotta want to go out there, and I mean, there's a practicing element, but then there's the game element.
Yeah.
And they're two different things, but they come together as one when that moment happens. So.
Did you coach at all?
Yeah, I did coach. I coached at Santa Barbara High School. I wasn't a head basketball coach. I was really fortunate to be the head coach of the freshman team, and which was a team that went undefeated, and players that went on to do great things, and they're further along. And that was a great experience, because when you're the coach of the freshman team, it's all just you and the kids. Maybe a couple parents that'll help out driving, right?
Right.
This is when the time of budget cuts, when there weren't a lot of buses and vans, and so you were just looking to parents to get kids from from point A to point B. And so it was a great experience working and coaching with kids. And I've done a lot of that different capacities. I've worked with Special Olympics over the years, YMCAs, and just always trying to, boys club. I coached at the boys club for a lot of years, and there was a lot of fun times doing that stuff. So yeah, coaching it's always good to give back, because you never know who's watching you. You never know who's looking at you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's one thing that when I came back to Santa Barbara after I left, a guy came up to me one day, a young Mexican-American kid, and he said, "You're Mark Alvarado, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I want to thank you." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's all, "Because when I was young, I used to watch you play. My dad used to go take me to watch you play, and I ended up being an all-CIF point guard for the Dons. And it was because I was inspired by you." And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's happened to me a couple times. Because, when you're a minority kid amongst this situation, you don't really think about it. You're just doing. You're just working,
right,
you know?
Right.
You don't know who's watching you. So that's one of my messages to people is like, people are watching you.
That's true.
Irregardless of what you're doing.
I did one season of freshman basketball coaching.
Okay.
For my little brother, my not so little brother, my younger brother. Yeah, it was subpar, but I learned a lot. But I did hear from a lot of parents, I can tell you that.
I was fortunate to play in college, in junior college, and I had a very good coach who was a bulldog.
Where?
Up at Allen Hancock College.
Okay,
I played for a guy named Bobby White, and Bobby White had played at Cal, and he was a Pac-10 player, and very intense guy, right? I can't do it for you guys. You got to go out there and do it yourselves, right? That kind of attitude. But I learned a lot about the game and about life in general, and so I always try to, give back a little bit of what I learned. Yeah.
Life's not easy, as we've learned. Anybody who's, I guess sometimes, you think things are going to go one way, and then you have to decide what you're going to do when they don't. Not everything's been smooth sailing for you. You've had challenges. Talk to us a little bit about that. Whatever you're.
Yeah, I think it's important that I share that, because, being raised in a home that eventually turned into a very dysfunctional home from a very young age, always struggling my first memory, and it's sad to say, is hearing my parents argue, and fighting. That's like my first memory in life, really, And I remember covering my head with the pillow to drown out the sound. I remember that. So growing up in that kind of environment and having older brothers and sisters, seeing them struggle and them kind of putting it back down on me because I'm the youngest, and so I kind of struggled with that growing up. And so you grow up quickly in a lot of ways, but in other ways you don't grow up at all. You don't grow up at all. And so I learned because of the environment that I was in that, there were certain things that you could do to survive versus thriving, right? And so you either thrive or you survive, right? And so somehow I was able to mix those things as I became a teenager, but they can creep up on you and the survival stuff. And so I started drinking at a very young age. And it was more of a self-medicated thing that gradually grew into a bad habit as an adult. Yeah. So that was something that I've overcome that, and I realized that, and I think that's why I'm able to do what I do today, is because I know kind of those pitfalls for young people and for adults, And you can't judge anybody. Everybody's got to kind of have to go through their own thing. But that was a huge challenge for me growing up. And then also within all of that, there was some certain mental health issues that got involved with my upbringing and didn't really allow me the best chances for, you know, academic excellence. I was always a decent student, but never knew that I was suffering from attention deficit disorder when I was a kid, all the way up until I was 52 years old is when it was finally diagnosed, right? And so, and always wondering why I struggled with budget spreadsheets when I had $1 million budgets in front of me, and people were looking at me like, what's wrong with you, you know what I mean? And I was still trying to plow through, right? That whole survival instinct, right? And so, but now, you know, you learned it's skills, not pills, right? You have to learn how to adjust to these adversities and not, you know, get into a dark corner and allow yourself to stay there, because that's where nothing's going to happen. But I'm just this, because getting back to this hustle attitude, right? That I wasn't going to let it get to me to the point to where I wasn't going to be effective anymore. I knew that I had enough wit, skill, knowledge, intelligence to overcome certain things. It just had to be a practice of not perfection, but a practice of patience, you know?
Yeah.
And also faith, God, you know, you got to get on your knees and you got to open up and you got to say, hey man, I can't do this alone.
That's right.
And I'm sorry that I, you know, I turned my back on you. Yeah. But, you know, I got on my knees one day and I just opened up my arms and I just said, hey man, take me in. And it worked. Yeah. And it was kind of a trip too, the way to see things happen when you find complete sobriety and you see how certain things in your life come before you that were always there, but they were kind of clouded. Right. But then all of a sudden they're brilliant and they're in front of you and they're there for the taking. You just got to do the work. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? And so I've been experiencing that over the last few years, and it's been a great experience.
Surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, you know, something I've been down this road too, and you know, sometimes somebody will say, you know, why do people, you know, 108,000 people died of a drug overdose in 2021. And sometimes I think the question can be, well, why? You know, why does this happen? Why did people drink? Why do people use these? And my first answer is because it works for a while. You know what I mean?
Most definitely.
It works until it doesn't. You know, and people are like, and fundamentally, I mean, nobody wakes up and says, I think I'll try to destroy my life this morning. People are just trying to make it through, and the truth is, it works until it doesn't.
Right. And unfortunately, you have to reach that point sometimes. And I'm thankful that I was able, not to do it on my own 100%, but that I was able to get these recognitions on my own and then seek out support, faith support, whatever you have. Yeah. But the thing with all of that is that it's a functional, dysfunctional habit along the way, because you're able to function, you're able to do what you need to do, but then you look back and you're like, God, I could have done that so much better. Yeah. You know, or I wasted so much time on that. You know, all of that.
But I had my own experience, my own fog. But when you said that, I resonate really with what you're saying. Things come alive. Like I remember kind of going, smells, or I remember kind of going, man, that grass is green. Did I know? Was that there before? You know, but it was almost like colors and food and like the senses, because I think with anything like this, it dulls, it deadens, it can deaden a person over time.
Well, yeah, we see it all the time where people just, you know, they have no, they're just a shell, and everything is just kind of just been stripped out of them, and it's very sad. And you wonder, like, well, what makes them different from me, or why can't they, right? And you always ask that, why can't? And I think it's science in a certain way, but also I think it's spiritual in a lot of ways, because I was raised in a very spiritual environment amongst everything, right? So I always had that. I've always had that with me, and I've always believed in that. But when you surrender, that spirituality comes alive in a different way, and it reinforces all of your beliefs and all your ideas, and knowing that all of a sudden that when you think with your heart versus thinking with the mind, because the mind is a very mischievous thing. It's very creative, very intelligent, very manipulative. It'll tell you, it'll make you believe all kinds of crazy stuff, right?
Yes.
But if you put things in your heart, then you're starting to deal with the purity of your soul and your spirit. Yeah. And those things are really, really what can touch people like you and I talking. That's what's You know, this conversation isn't by chance. I believe that. I believe we're having this reason for this conversation, right? Because it's reinforcing everything that we're talking about.
Yeah. Do you get to speak places? Do you get to share your journey with kids? Or
I'm getting there. I'm coming out of there. Yeah, I'm getting there. I just was on NPR on the Storytellers. Yeah. Oh. And so I volunteer annually down in El Paso, Texas at a camp. And I'm the music director of the camp. I'm a professional musician as well. And so I'm able to talk there. But as far as talking to groups, it's coming. I think that this is like the introduction. I think that we're going to use this as a platform.
That's right.
And so we're going to just move forward on there. Yeah, but
I like that idea. Yeah. So let's talk about your music. And so you Mark, so you worked in government, you had this career, and then during COVID, is my understanding, is when really this vision for one community, or one community bridge project.
Yeah. So let me just back up just a little bit. Yeah. So like I said, my dad was a jazz head. My mom had all the Mexican music, and my brothers were into the soul and the rock, and my sister the reggae. So it was all kinds of music going on all over the place. My dad used to know when we took the needle off of his record to play our records, because he used to leave the needle right where he stopped listening to go to work or whatever. So he'd come back, hey, who played my record player, right? He was that meticulous. But anyhow, so I just grew up in a household of music, and on my mom's side, they were professional singers, okay? They were professional mariachi singers. I mean, big voice people, right? And so I was blessed with that gene. And so you talk to my friends that have known me all my life, they're like, yeah, Mark's just doing what Mark does, because I've always been singing. And so thankfully I got some skills, took some classes, some vocal classes, started bands, and did all kinds of, I've done all kinds of recordings, productions, festivals, you name it. You know, I've been a part of a lot of different things over the years. But when I stopped working for the government, I call it, early retirement, because I'm not retired fully, but just to get that out of the way and get into something that's more serving for Mark and for the community and for what I'm doing. And so there's a study, the University of Pennsylvania did a study in New York, and they studied all the 5 boroughs and what's their connection to the Met, what's their connection to Broadway, what's their connection to all the great things that New York City, the Big Apple, has to offer. And a lot of the narratives came back like they had no connection. They had no connection to those things. So I'm thinking about Santa Barbara, and I'm thinking about the kids that we work with in the neighborhood, how much of a connection they have with the Bowl, the Granada, the Arlington, music of the West, right? And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. There's not a huge connection. And so I figured, well, we need to start to build capacity within the neighborhoods around the cultural arts so people could find an academic pathway through the arts for success, because not every kid, has those opportunities. So that's kind of the concept of the One Community Bridge Project. Yeah, so I use my musical background, and I work with kids. You would love to come in there and just see the kids, and when we start getting into it, and they just, very simple, we go over different patterns of music or syncopations. I introduce all the different popular music from the 50s, from the jazz. I stop around the mid-90s because that's kind of where I drop out with popular music.
I'm with you.
But you know what I mean? But that canon from the early 50s to the mid-90s really, and the kids all resonate with it.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's what I do. And
now I know who God gave my voice to, by the way.
Yeah.
And if I had your voice, man, I could do some stuff.
Well, and it's a responsibility. Let me put it to you that way.
Do you ever do voiceover work?
No.
I'm giving you all these career ideas.
Well, if you want to help me, find me a publicist. We'll figure it out.
You definitely can do voiceover work. Yeah, that's a gift. That's a God gift.
Yeah, it is. All of that. And just like I say, but going back to the self-medicating and all these, you don't realize. You're just surviving. You're just surviving. You're not thriving.
Totally. Yeah, we have a problem, I think, with this drug thing, and the COVID thing, I think, exacerbated a lot of the isolation. But it's amazing how addiction by itself isolates.
Yeah, because what happens a lot of times is that people internalize it, and they think that there's something wrong with them.
Right.
When there's nothing wrong with them, they've just become a host to this thing for a variety of different reasons. Yeah. Right. It even started in the womb. Right. We don't even know, right? And I see it working with kids today. I see kids, or I see myself. Yeah. I literally see myself. And so it's really working with a therapeutic lens with people versus working from a disciplinary lens, especially with young kids. You know, a lot of kids, they shut down because maybe what's going on at home, on their life, they shut down. And you get them in the classroom, it's not like a light switch that you can just switch on and then they're on. Okay, I'm ready to learn. It's not like that for kids. And so if they feel threatened, or if a person feels threatened, they're just going to shut down and they're going to do whatever they can to feel safe.
Yeah.
And so that's part of addiction.
Yeah, right. And the whole fentanyl thing and the whole
that's horrible,
there's so much of it that can be hidden, and I think, I believe in God very strongly, and I also believe that there's another force that's working on the other side.
Absolutely.
And if you can isolate somebody and get them alone, where they're not hearing somebody else say, "Hey, no, you're not a bad guy.
Yeah.
We can do this."
Yeah.
Because when you say it out loud to another person, you say, "Hey, here's the deal. I'm not okay."
Yeah.
Like, and then that person can say, "Well, I'm with you. Let's figure this out." All of a sudden, we got a chance. If I'm alone in an apartment somewhere, shut down with the blinds drawn, it's tough.
Right, and the other piece of that too is that when a person is confronted that way, or in a therapeutic situation or therapy or what have you, it's not about really fixing the person. It's about restoring what was taken away from them.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And so that sometimes it's a taboo of going to AA or getting therapy or whatever, and it's not. And it's because there's something wrong with me. No. And so a lot of it is how we present it in media, how we present it in public. Yeah. And it's really a situation where I've learned over the years that you're right. It's a one-on-one situation until that person is ready to say, okay, yeah, I need help, or they can do it on their own. But it's a difficult.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's a difficult.
AA may be the greatest organization known to man in human history. I'm not kidding. AA, I think, is the closest thing to the actual church, because imagine a place where you stumble in, and we've seen all kinds, and it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Is it? You know what I mean?
The acceptance of who you are, and not necessarily what you are, if that makes any sense.
But everybody calls the BS too. Like you can't fool people there.
Oh no, everybody's on point there, but the few times I went, they wanted me to start running the meetings right away. I said, "Hey, I just got here." Yeah, I spoke one time, and they say, "Hey, you want to run the meeting?" I'm like, "Hey, I just got here, man." Right. And so, but what was interesting about that experience was to see the veterans, the guys that had been in there for 30, 40 years and who stuck with it and believed it, and like I say, like a religion, like a church, and them offering their advice to the younger people or the people that were coming in that were needing extra love. And so, yeah, it works. It works.
Yeah.
It works.
The gift of desperation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. So what's your vision for this project?
So right now, it's a situation where I'm very fortunate that I have an agreement with the school district to work in schools. I'm very fortunate that I don't have transportation needs. I don't have facility needs, because I can do everything in school, after school, summer. So really what it is to introduce these different concepts of music to the children. 5th grade to 9th grade is usually my window. And once they start to express an interest in an instrument, then getting the resources to bring in the master musicians to teach them piano, teach them guitar, right? And teach them dance, teach them art, whatever it might be. And so that's really my vision for the program, and to build it that way, and to knock on doors and say, "Hey, do you want to support this program? Because it's going to pay for this," and not necessarily for a building, for transportation, because a lot of funders, they just, and I get it. I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And also too, your numbers. When people say, "Oh yeah, we serve 350 kids," well, how can you measure the impact of that versus saying we serve 15, 20 kids? And we can tell you their academic differences, their social emotional differences, their behavioral differences, parent engagement, all of these things. And so I believe in working in smaller numbers and having more of an impact that way versus, oh yeah, we're going to serve the whole.
Yeah, right. It's one at a time.
Yeah.
The music is a powerful thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It really is. And I know it's connected to the brain. I've learned a little bit about that. But in terms of what music does for a kid, it's well beyond.
I mean, I've seen what the Turner Foundation has done with their Housing Authority program, with the high school kids that you guys work with, and I've worked with some of those kids in school, and then I
really?
see them working with David Rojas
Yeah.
on the stage, and I'm like, wow.
It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? And it's just, it is. And it's a beautiful, that's a great program.
Yeah.
That's a great program.
Yeah, David
but
Rojas.
I'm kind of with the younger kids, get them ready, them ready for David.
I keep telling those guys, I need piano lessons. It's never too late.
Well, never. That was one thing that's one thing that I can't remember what music teacher told me that, but no matter what age, you can always learn an instrument.
Yes.
You'll always learn an instrument. You can do whatever it is.
I still have a dream that I could
Hey.
do piano. Someday I'll play the piano. I don't know.
Well, the thing with that is do you have one at home?
Yes,
Okay, well then you just need to block out the time,
I know.
and you got to find the
I
time.
could be doing Sweet Caroline. You never know. I can't believe we're already almost out of time. How can people find you? Do you have a website up? Or
Yeah, we have it's onecommunitysb.org. It's
.org.
onecommunitysb.org.
They'll put that up.
.org, yeah.
And then so raising money, thinking about equipment. It sounds like a one need.
Well, I do have the infrastructure. Thank God I got an award from the Bull Foundation. And so
nice.
they funded they've been funding us the last couple. First they got us settled up with some equipment, then they helped me last year with some teaching money, so they're asking me again. So I'm going to be looking again for this year to get some money to work with students, and then I'm working on another project with the Youth Wilderness Project.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, on working with some of the other kids that have more of the behavioral challenges and some of the violence that we've been seeing in the community. We're trying to do some preventative work with kids that are kind of influenced by gang culture, street mentality, and getting some positive reinforcement for those children, because some of those kids don't get any of that.
Yeah. Ah, so great. You're doing God's work, man.
Well, thank God that we're still here to do it.
That's right. I'm grateful.
I'm honored.
I love it.
I'm honored.
Mark Alvarado, everybody, look him up. onecommunitysb.org is the website. If you're interested in music, kids, I really believe in what this guy's doing. Great to meet you.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good, Dean.
Once a Don, always a Don. I'll be at the Don's baseball game later today.
Well, I prefer that's where legends are made.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mark Alvarado is one of them. Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you.